Hello YouTubers. So today I'm going to talk about AngularJS. You know, the JavaScript libraries have taken over most of the client side and sometimes even the server side of the development world. So now most of the applications, web applications that you interact with, think of things like, you know, Facebook, think of things like Google Docs, all these kind of, you know, heavy loaded applications are now leaning more towards client-side technologies like AngularJS. So since I'm a server-side developer, I didn't have so much investment. Most of the time, as you've seen in my previous videos, I just rely heavily on the scaffolding and the auto generation of Razor when it comes to creating C# modules, and I just let Razor generation do the rest of the work for me when it comes to forms and whatnot. I wanted to scratch the surface on the client side and technologies, and one of the most the big things out there from a professional perspective is AngularJS. What it basically does is that it allows you to be more productive, more resilient when it comes to changing requirements. It's very straightforward when it comes to patterns. So you have a view and a controller and a model. I want to scratch the surface on that, and I wanted to see how hard could it be for a server-side developer to actually start writing things that make sense in Angular without having to pull their hair off. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to start a new project on Visual Studio 2015. And what I want to do here is that I want to start an ASP.NET web application. I'm going to call it Angular Kickstart. What I want to select here is just an empty project. So it doesn't really matter ASP.46 or ASP.NET 5 to me at this point, but I'm just going to go with 4, even though it adds some other things that I'm not very familiar with. But what I really want to do is just a skeleton of a solution. Of course, it's going to throw in there the SLN and all the files that you want to call it a Visual Studio project that you can actually open and manage in Visual Studio. So it's loading in here, and what I want to do is just a very simple like Angular app that literally does nothing but just list a bunch of names. That's really pretty much it. So here's my project, and what I want to do here at the beginning is that I want to have an HTML file that will be the view. So I'm going to go here and just say, I'll call this index HTML, and that's really pretty much it. You know, that's just an index file that has nothing in it. So if I go ahead and run my app, it should literally show nothing. Here's my thing. Nothing, completely. All right. Now, what I want to do is actually put some stuff in that app. So I want my view to start to have some code in it, and in order for you to do that, what you really want to start doing is write some JavaScript. Since AngularJS is really relying on JavaScript, most of our files that we're writing are going to be in JavaScript. So I'm just going to put here, go to JavaScript and just say Scratch app. So I'm calling it Scratch app. So typically when you write an Angular app, you just go and say angular.module, and then you start doing things. As you see here, like one of the best features in Visual Studio actually in general is the IntelliSense. The IntelliSense is not really working here. So I really care about these things when I'm developing, because I don't want to give second chances for misspelling, you know, thinking what the word is, go look on Google and whatnot. IntelliSense is very important for developers when it comes to, you know, development. So what I want to do here is that in the tools, you want to go and call the console, and we're going to install a package that will give us also the Angular in addition to the IntelliSense of Angular. So it's called Angular.js dot, and if I click tab here, it just auto completes it for me. So what this guy's going to do is going to go pull all the Angular libraries in addition to the IntelliSense. So if you look at the scripts in here, it pulled in Angular min and Angular IntelliSense, and the most important part is the references, where it tells it what file is where. So okay, I have that now. Let's drag in and write our app. So I said Angular. I'm even gonna start from here. So look now, it's just giving me the IntelliSense that I need. So I don't need to go look around and see what function I need to deal with. Now it's really up and running. So I'm just gonna start with a module, and you want to call your app something. So I'm just gonna call it Scratch app. And there will be nothing in here since we're going to put all the other functionality in the controller. So now that you know created this app, you want to call Scratch app in your HTML, but you have to remember this. You have to reference your stuff. So you have to reference both Angular library and your app, and you have to reference the Angular library before your app. If you switch, it's just simply not going to work, because it really cares what loads first. Like common sense, if you're defining a function, you need to mention it first before you actually define that function before you actually use it. If you put the function below the code, even though it will work with C# because it parses on runtime, on development time actually, it is best that you put all your functions above before you actually use them or utilize them. So in here, I'm just going to go and say script. I'm going to say source. Also, one good feature in here is that it just tells you, it just shows you what files and what folders you have. So in the scripts part, I'm just going to go and call Angular min, and it's minimized because it loads faster on the client side, on the browser. Also, now I want to put my own app, which is my own JavaScript. So there we go. We have both of these guys. Not sure if I need to define the type. We'll find out. So okay, still nothing. You know, I haven't used anything, but the new thing is in here is that I'm just going to go and say ng, and as you see, the Visual Studio will allow you also to have an IntelliSense on the markup side. So I want to put ng app, and what did I call my app? Scratch app, I think. I'm looking at this guy in here. So it's Scratch app. It doesn't really care what the file name is. If you're thinking, oh, we have to name the file the same thing as the app, it doesn't have anything to do with it. What it really cares about and what it really parses is this guy. So let's go here and say, so okay, so we have this app. Now I want to create a controller, and what this controller is supposed to do is just list a bunch of files. So I'm just going to say, here's my app. I want to put a controller in there. I want to call my controller Scratch controller. And inside this guy, we have a function that we will pass the scope to it. And the scope is like this global thing that you could hook up whatever whatever properties, whatever calls, whatever. It's your global namespace that you attach properties and functions to it in order for you to call it on the client side. I mean on the markup side, on the HTML. So if I'm not missing anything here, I'm just going to go ahead and say, so in that scope, we will add a bunch of names. And of course, it's a dynamic thing. Think of the expando object in C#. And probably C# is one of the very few server-side languages that provide that kind of dynamism in when you define an object, and you don't really have to initiate an abstract level when you talk about the class. So in the scope, I just said names. I'm just going to put a list in here, and this list is just going to be a bunch of names. So I'm just going to go say Hassan. I'm going to say Mark. I'm going to say Chris. Whatever names are in there. All right, that's pretty much it. So let's go back to the markup side. Let's call a div, and let's put a controller, which is a control that we created. We called it scratch controller, like this. And by the way, you can use the app, the ng app, and the ng controller inside the same markup, so that really doesn't matter. Now I want to show this data that I have in here. So Angular offers you this cool thing for the iteration. So I'm going to use something like an unordered list, and I'm going to call something called ng repeat. And here's it's like your for loop or iteration from a computer science abstract perspective. So what I want to loop through is the names in the scope. So I'm going to say find a name in the names. And for every name in the names, print it out. So I'm just going to go and say li, just an li that doesn't have anything in it, but I'm going to just print out the name. So you see here, this is like a for loop, and I'm just printing out the value for each iteration in that list names. Names came actually from here, because the scope is that generic namespace, so you get to actually call it and do things with it. So let's see. Theoretically, when we run this app, our hypothesis is that when we run this app, it's supposedly gonna list our names. So let's see if that really gonna work. And there we go. Here's our names right there. So what really happened is just it looped through that data, and it just posted it out to the page. So I think that's cool. There's also a lot of things with the binding and how to send data back to the object and then pull it back out. I'm gonna come across these things. I just wanted to show, like, the main purpose of this video is to show you guys how easy it is to actually go and actually write an Angular app that really all it took is just download the IntelliSense, and you're gonna need the references anyway, and just start coding. And all the code that I wrote is just install package AngularJS, and you're good to go. In my next video, I'll talk about how to make Angular talk to APIs, web APIs. So let's say you're writing in C#. I talked before about writing APIs in C# and the post and delete and all these RESTful operations. How can we make Angular talk to my API and pull these names from the database instead of actually having them hard-coded in here? Thank you for watching, and keep coding.